Hey guys, Steinixos here. So today we'll be talking about the King of Curses, Ryomen Sukuna from Jujutsu Kaisen versus one of the Dark Triad, Dante Zogratis from Black Clover. Now for this video, we'll be using a 15-fingered Sukuna that is still within Itadori Yuji's body, and we'll be assuming that Dante is at 100%. But note importantly, for this video, stats such as speed, durability, and strength of both characters will be assumed to be equal, because for this video, we'll mainly be focusing on the interaction of their abilities. But as usual, there will be no equalization of power systems. So with that said, let's get into it. Now both Dante and Sukuna have amazing regenerative abilities. So for example, when Jack continuously slashes Dante, his body is cut with each slash, because Dante's intrinsic and extrinsic physical durability of his body isn't able to prevent this initial damage. However, because he has an amazing regenerative capacity, all of these cuts just instantly heal. So basically they do not do any long-lasting damage. All they do is slightly exhaust Dante's magic power. And this led to Jack losing because, even though his magic can change its property to match its opponent, that just did not matter given that he did not have nearly as much magic power as Dante. So he ran out of magic power before Dante and thus was unable to continue the fight. So again, it's not that his slashes stopped working, it is just that he ran out of the energy needed to continue to slash. But what this means is that with Dante's body magic, as long as he has magic energy remaining, he can regenerate from virtually any wound. Now the same is true of Sukuna. As long as he has cursed energy, he can carry out reversed cursed healing to heal virtually any wound. We have seen him casually recover Yuji's arms and brought back Yuji from a near-death state. And of course, we've seen other applications of reverse cursed healing, such as by the likes of Gojo, to heal from frank evisceration of the chest, followed by a knife to the neck, and then being stabbed directly in the brain. And even when Fingerbearer regenerated after having all its limbs sliced off, Sukuna merely mocks it and says regeneration like that is not difficult for cursed spirits. So given these two combatants' amazing regenerative capacity, there are three main possible win conditions. The first is complete eradication of the opponent. Now this is speculative because it was not explicitly stated in either of the anime, but you'll note for Dante that he always regenerates from the parts of his body that are left. And the same is true of Sukuna. He always regenerates from the parts of Yuji's body that are left. And he wasn't able to form a new flesh and blood body for himself as a cursed spirit. He had to possess Yuji. So if you were to completely eradicate either of their body, it is unlikely that they could regenerate, because it seems that they need something to regenerate from. Now both of these guys have a way of potentially satisfying this win condition. Dante has his gravity singularity. This is an attack where Dante creates a small black hole that he then launches at an opponent. The black hole sucks in and destroys anything in a short range around it as it moves. And it also grows larger, and the range of its destruction expands the further from Dante it gets. Now given that it evaporated a portion of a mountain just by passing through it, if it got to a large enough size and scored a direct hit on Sukuna, Yuji's body should be completely wiped out. Sukuna also has his unnamed Fire Blast, which he used to eradicate Jogo, a cursed spirit who specializes in fire and magma. And Dante is not even known to have any particular special resistance against fire. So again, if this hits, it is quite likely that it would evaporate Dante out of existence. The problem here is that neither of these projectile attacks are traveling at a speed that is substantially faster than either of these characters. So it is unlikely that any of these attacks could get a direct hit. If they aren't dodged outright, it would just be a partial hit, which can easily be regenerated from by either of these characters. But remember, Dante also has his presence of the Demon King, which is the spell that he uses to dramatically increase the strength of gravity in an area in front of him. So at this point, some people will ask, well, what if Dante uses presence of the Demon King to immobilize or at least slow down Sukuna to increase his chance of hitting him with Gravity Singularity. But the problem here is that this spell is useless against someone who is naturally physically strong or against someone who can greatly enhance their physical strength with their powers. We saw this in Dante's fight against Magna. When they both had the same amount of magic energy, Magna gained the physical strength to withstand Dante's gravity. Yami also partially was able to withstand it with his physical strength before using Black Moon to erase the effect of the spell in his immediate surrounding area. So it is very unlikely that Dante could increase gravity to a level that would significantly impact Sukuna. So this first method of complete eradication won't be the method that decides this battle. The second and more likely method is exhausting their ability to regenerate by causing them to finish up their respective energy. That is magical energy for Dante and cursed energy for Sukuna. This second method is already clearly defined as a method of beating Dante in the Black Cloververse, given his battle with Magna. So as Magna highlighted, when Dante is fighting someone on his level, he will burn through his magic reserves quickly and even unknowingly, given his inexperience in having such fights. Sukuna, on the other hand, is unlikely to burn through his cursed energy reserves as quickly as Dante, given that he has very intimate knowledge of Jujutsu and obviously has to be as efficient as possible to be able to fight combatants like Gojo, who has the 6 eyes that makes his cursed energy loss almost zero. However, even if we were to assume that they both ran out of magic and cursed energy at the same time, it is still in Sukuna's favor because unlike Dante, who relies heavily on his magic-related augmentation and super regeneration, which he basically becomes useless without, Sukuna, on the other hand, is still very physically capable, even without the use of cursed energy, as highlighted by Megumi. And yet again, unlike Dante, who has a normal body when he can't regenerate, Sukuna, on the other hand, without regeneration, can survive even with the absence of a major organ such as the heart. So given these facts, we can use this Dante versus Magna battle as a rubric and even restrict Sukuna to only punches and no regeneration like Magna, and it is still a clear victory for Sukuna. However, some of you may be dissatisfied, so let us try to resolve this from another angle. Let us speak about Sukuna's domain expansion, Malevolent Shrine. So a normal complete domain expansion usually consists of 2 steps. The first is to expand a barrier to create a separate space and trap your opponent. The second is to imbue every single inch of that space with your innate domain. And an innate domain is basically an inner world that you completely control. So a domain expansion is basically the act of bringing your inner world into the outside world. The main advantage of a domain expansion is that all your techniques done within the domain are guaranteed to hit. Now, Sukuna's domain expansion, Malevolent Shrine, is a bit different from other domain expansions, in that it doesn't create a separate space using a barrier, but rather it paints his innate domain onto reality itself. Now, the fact that it doesn't trap the opponent by using a barrier creates a binding vow that allows him to manifest his domain over a larger distance, specifically up to 200 meters above ground. Now, within his domain expansion, Sukuna utilizes 2 types of slashing attacks. Dismantle, which is a regular slashing attack, which is sharp enough to reduce buildings to fine debris, and the Cleave, which changes its features based on a opponent's characteristics, like toughness and cursed energy, to cut them down in a single strike. And this is not like Jack, who is a single person who is making multiple slashes from his body. No, within Sukuna's domain expansion of up to 200 meters, there are an innumerable amount of slashes that come from every single direction within every single inch of his domain that operates on autopilot without him having to even move. And of course, there are ways to deal with some domain expansions in the Jujutsu Kaisen verse, like using a simple domain or using Falling Blossom emotion, which more or less neutralizes the domain expansion in a variable region around the user. But these are specific anti-domain techniques to which Dante has no equivalent. So for example, Dante's spatial manipulation to avoid attacks is not similar to simple domain or falling blossom emotion. It is more similar to Gojo's spatial manipulation of forming infinity to block attacks. And even Gojo's infinity is neutralized within a domain expansion to facilitate the guaranteed hit. It is also important to note that attacks within a domain expansion don't necessarily move from one point to another through space. Some attacks literally come into being at the point at which they make contact with the opponent. And this seems to be the mechanism of Sukuna's autopilot slashing attacks within his domain expansion. The closest example of a anti-domain technique in the Black Cloververse is Yami's dark magic Black Moon, which erases the effect of an area of effect spell, like presence of a Demon King, in a small area around Yami. This is very comparable to a simple domain, which basically does the same thing. So Dante has no way of defending against this, and the range is more than sufficient to ensure that he's continuously hit. So when faced with this relentless onslaught of blades from every single angle over a 200-meter radius that will definitely hit, without a doubt, Dante's body magic will quickly be exhausted, preventing him from regenerating or using any significant magic, and thus he will lose. So at this point, I do not think there should be any question that this match is definitely Sukuna's. However, there may still be disagreements in the form of someone saying things like, oh no, Dante would block the attacks, despite him having no way of doing so, or Dante would somehow escape the domain expansion, despite a 200-meter radius being more than sufficient. So let us move on to the third possible win condition, which is to bypass or nullify the regeneration altogether. This, for example, was done by Asta when literally one clean cut from his anti-magic sword, which nullified Dante's regeneration, was able to knock Dante out. Now Dante has no means of nullifying or bypassing Sukuna's regenerative abilities, but Sukuna can bypass Dante's regenerative abilities by directly attacking his soul. Mahito is a cursed spirit that uses cursed energy to literally shape and manipulate souls, including his own. And to properly hurt Mahito, you need to attack his soul directly, because any damage done to his body is basically healed by him preserving the form of his soul. Now, just by constantly being in contact with Sukuna, Yuji was able to learn to attack the soul directly, and thus was able to hurt Mahito. And after Mahito accidentally touched Sukuna's soul the first time, Sukuna was completely impervious to it, and he warned Mahito that this should not happen again. And when Mahito accidentally touched Sukuna's soul a second time, Sukuna was shown to attack and hurt Mahito. So without a doubt, the King of Curses Sukuna can attack souls. And body manipulation cannot defend against soul attacks or heal the soul. I mean, it is in the name. So Sukuna doesn't even need to exhaust Dante's magic energy to win. He can bypass the regeneration altogether by attacking Dante's soul. And literally a single hit from Sukuna could be fatal. So at this point, even if you were to disregard everything else, for Dante to just stay alive, he would need to prevent Sukuna from even landing a single blow throughout their entire fight, which is quite unlikely. But for the sake of discussion, let us say he could. Let us say Dante could prevent every single attack from Sukuna. Even then, he would really only be dragging out the battle because he has no practical way of actually beating Sukuna. So given that Dante basically has no win conditions, and Sukuna has multiple ways to win which he can carry out with relative ease, it seems clear to me that Sukuna is the winner of this match. But I'd love to hear what you guys think, so let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, if you guys liked the video, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe. But anyway, see you guys next time.